Welcome back to Breakfast Central. Now, as the nation mourns the passing of former President Muhammadu Buhari, it's also an opportunity to reflect critically, compassionately, and candidly on his legacy. President Muhammadu Buhari, who passed away on Sunday and was buried yesterday in a state funeral at his hometown of Daura in Katsina State. His legacy, however, remains deeply woven into the fabric of Nigeria's recent journey.
The late president was a defining figure in Nigeria's political history. His administration led Nigeria to several changes, positive and negative. But as we assess his legacy, the question remains, how much impact did he make and how much of it will outlive him? Join us this morning for this important discussion as the national chairman of the ADP party and former chairman Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC, Alhaji Yabagi Sani. A warm welcome to you, Alhaji Sani, and thanks for joining us for Breakfast Central this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigerians and your listeners.
Now, my first question would be your reactions to the news of the death of the late President Muhammadu Buhari and his funeral. How would you remember him and what's his legacy for you?
Well, we pray that Allah will grant him a Jannah Firdausi because he was a leader that I believe his kind will be difficult to find when you look at the history of this country. Of course, well, tomorrow is bigger than today, so we can't say that we may not find somebody that perhaps will hold a candle to him. But if you look at Muhammadu Buhari, I think he personifies everything about Nigeria and then everything about leadership. Leadership is a big, endeavor in the sense that nobody can really meet the challenges, all the challenges of leadership, adequately to satisfaction of the led. So I believe the history will be kind to him in a very special way, especially when you look at one thing that is very important. The fundamental thing about history is how truthful are you, with the people? How honest, are you? The issue of integrity, the issue of trust. And then in Nigeria, and I'm sure everywhere, it's not how much education you have in terms of paper qualification or how smart you are, but how reliable are you? How credible are you? How much can people trust you when you say something? Are you really going to stand by what you said? I think that is the mark of a good leader. And I think Muhammadu Buhari fulfilled all those requirements. So that's why I said the history will be kind to him, and then will become a reference point that how honest is this person? Is he going to be honest with us? Is this somebody that we can really trust? So Muhammadu Buhari was a trustworthy leader. And of course, like I said, he had his challenges. And those challenges are not something that is unusual when you are leading a country of over 250 million people, different backgrounds, different cultures, different traditions, different beliefs. And then you have to now contend with how you balance the expectations of the people. And then, expectations in most cases with the human beings is rooted in their beliefs. And then in Nigeria, we know that it can be described as a collection of nations. Where I'm talking about these primordial sentiments that have eaten deep into the fabrics of our society. Was it politics you want to look at, economy you want to look at, social aspect of it you want to look at? These primordial sentiments have become very, very deep in the ways we do things. That's why I always like to refer to the saying of one professor of history, that is Ali Mazrui. He said that we have, we Africans, not only Nigerians, we have what he called triple heritage. And this triple heritage is the issue of your customs, as a person, the issue of the Western influence of Western civilization. And then you also have the issue of the influence of your religion also. In some cases you are Christian, some are Muslims, some are atheists. So you always have these three heritage, the contending forces, if you like, and call it the three concentric cycles that a Nigerian or a leader has to deal with. So, and Muhammadu Buhari personifies all these things. When it comes to Muhammadu Buhari's leadership as far as his faith is concerned, I'm talking about his religion, his moral, upright, his spiritual, upright. They are firm. He's very, very, firm when it comes to those three things. And those three things define, an individual. And that's what tells people the kind of person you are and how much you can be trusted. And I think this is why some of us misread him. They think that he's somebody who is not approachable. But believe me, my personal experience with Muhammadu Buhari, is something that you won't believe it. I found him to be a highly, highly accommodating individual, very humble, believe me. He is always ready to listen to you, provided what you are saying, to a very large extent is not in any way trying to deceive him or, be economical with words or things like that. So he was a leader that I believe will become a reference point when you are looking for a leader that can be trusted. And like I said, trust is something that is very, very fundamental, very important in leadership. The moment people cannot trust you anymore, you've lost it. No matter how educated you are, no matter how smart you are, no matter what you think you are doing, which may be different from better than what others are doing. So this is why I want to give it to him as one leader in the history of this country that will stand out, will become a reference point.
You've spoken about the strength of his character in terms of religion, morality, and the likes. And these are some of the things, in fact, in terms of also his discipline, were some of the expectations Nigerians had when he was coming into office. One of the things, or one of the areas he has spoken so strongly about trying to effect a change would be in the area of corruption, dealing with corruption. However, there are those who argue that the fight against corruption in his time was rather symbolic and not necessarily in-depth. So let's get your thoughts. How well do you think the President Buhari administration fared in the fight against corruption?
Well, I think people mistook Muhammadu Buhari of the military era, with the Muhammadu Buhari of the civilian era, democratic era. Under military administration, it's a mechanistic system, like it's obey the last command, and then, but under the civilian administration, he had to contend with all the other forces that equally had the force of the Constitution, behind them. You look at the National Assembly, you look at the judiciary, you look at now even the executive itself. And then you also, under civilian administration, you have to now deal with the issue of effectiveness in your delivery of the mandate that is given to you, meaning that you have to satisfy almost the impossibles, when you come to do things. Meaning that in your appointments, and like you said, as a leader, under civilian administration, you are not expected to be good in everything. And you are supposed to be good in leadership, leading. You cannot be a good doctor, in terms of health aspect or agriculture aspect or other aspect of life. But as a leader, they want you to be very, very strong, firm, trustworthy, so that you can be able to identify those that you will delegate your responsibilities to, your mandate to. Because but in our particular case, like you talk about corruption, and that's why I'm trying to tell you that as a president, all you can do is to show example by way of how you do things. It's not what you say, but it's what you do. And I think that's what Muhammadu Buhari was trying to do. And what worked against him is the system itself. He had to appoint people. you look at EFCC that was put, ICBC also was put, in order to fight, corruption, so that we will degrade corruption to a very minimal acceptable level. But what happened in EFCC? Even under Buhari or before Buhari, you find that those appointed were also found to be, found wanting, in the area of the fight. I mean, what they wanted, the assignment given to them, they themselves were found wanting. And most of them were removed under, very, very controversial, embarrassing situations. So as a president, you have to delegate. And this is a civilian administration where, you cannot take action immediately, even if you wanted to. You have to follow the due process, unfortunately. So, and this is, I think, the drawback. This is what worked against President Muhammadu Buhari, because up to today, and I'm sure until the end of time, nobody can come out and say, Buhari took this from me, or he discussed this matter that was about his own interest alone, not about the state. So that is why corruption is about how we Nigerians and how we want to really deal with the corruption, because the system is not. Look at what is happening even under Bola Ahmed Tinubu himself. I mean, the people are pointing fingers to some people, under him in his administration. Even build up to when people were appointed as ministers. We gathered that some people had to pay, money before they were appointed as ministers, and even today there are issues with some areas in the administration which borders on corruption. But it is the people themselves, we, that will have to come up and be firm on the fight against corruption, because the system, the legal system, is such a frustrating, procedure, for you to be able to get justice. Even as a president, you like I said, and I'm repeating myself, you cannot just do whatever you like. No, that is a democracy for you. So this is why the fight against corruption under Muhammadu Buhari and under any other president that you want to talk about will be something that we Nigerians ourselves will have to believe that we need to fight this corruption we're talking about, because it is the counter one. It's what has worked against us. It works against every country, and then some of them are institutionalized. And we see, look at NNPC, for instance. Look at how long it took Bola Ahmed Tinubu to change the management in NNPC, even though we knew, and he knew too, that every problems we are talking about, like these subsidy issues we are talking about, can be traced to the mismanagement in NNPC. We talk about the foreign exchange, it comes from the NNPC, which is the subsidy on it. So if you talk about the fuel itself that we are giving subsidy, petroleum subsidy, it was mismanaged by NNPC, but it took him almost forever, before he could do anything to the management in that sector of the economy. So I'm telling you, that's why I'm saying it's not Muhammadu Buhari that could not fight, corruption, but even leaders before him. And I'm telling you, leaders even after him, until we start really believing that it's us as people, we start really dealing with people that are corrupt, in the manner that it should be. Because look at other climes, that are described as developed or developed. All right. The rule of law is obeyed, and it's not just the government; it's also the people themselves.
Okay. I mean, you've spoken well about some of the things, especially that of corruption, even though majority of Nigerians will not agree with the fact that the former and late president had come out to talk tough, where he did make a statement that if we don't kill corruption, corruption will kill Nigeria. And Nigerians were hoping, the more reason why they put their thumb, especially during the election, was that they thought he was the messiah to end corruption in the country, but it seems like that never came to pass. The president, former president, I beg your pardon, the late former president, was also very used to not addressing Nigerians in public. He was not there to speak to Nigerians and many attributed this to his ill health, hence why he had to travel out to the country many times during his administration. Aside that, he did make a very powerful statement where he said he's for, I can't remember that statement
everybody
now.
and for nobody.
I am for everybody and I am for nobody as well. And that also got a lot of persons talking. Would you say that the late president's style of ruling, as it were, helped democracy grow in Nigeria in any way? Or do you think it kind of like kept us in a space where we needed to do more?
I think we need to do more because you can take somebody like Muhammadu Buhari out of the military, but you can't take the military out of him. Somebody spent the entire life, his entire, salad days, the most useful part of his life in a particular environment. And today, you want to bring him from that environment and put him in a completely different environment, and you want the same kind of performance, the same kind of results that you get from it. It can never happen because it's a human being. So this is the point I'm trying to make, that you have to be factual. I mean, you have to be sincere with ourselves. How you measure the performance of Muhammadu Buhari in a democratic setting, the people were expecting too much, believe me, and this is what happened. And he himself, he wanted to give more than he could give because he came with the passion, with the commitment, with the dedication, and then to really deliver, especially the area of corruption, like you said, and the area of democratic governance, But he performed really, if you look at it. Buhari never pursued as a person one party, one party state, in Nigeria. No, it wasn't. He didn't. He was, in fact, accused by his party that he's favoring the opposition too much, So, but here we are today. We have a Democrat in the saddle. That is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and what are the democratic gains have we gotten in terms of his approach to how he deals with the opposition? See what is happening. So these are things that we are talking about, that we must be very pragmatic when we are looking at people. You can't take them out of their roots, that is what they make up the man. But he tried, I think, because under him, the opposition fared better than what is happening today, if you are talking about democracy. So I think, to a very large extent, like I started telling you, that there are challenges that he couldn't surmount at all. And of course, he wasn't happy himself, but he was happy that he left at the time he left, because he performed as was required, up to the end of the tenure, which is the 8 years that was given under civil administration. And he retired to his home in Daura, and when God was ready to take him back, he took him, and I think the party was well met, So the fact of the leadership and time of Muhammadu Buhari, like I said, it's a study, for the students of history, and it's something that Nigeria can take something out of by ensuring that you have leaders that you can trust.
Thank you, Alhaji Sani. Others will argue that, he wasn't the only one in such a position, that you had former President Olusegun Obasanjo, who was equally a former general in the army, and he also had a two-term run as civilian president, and when you compare the legacies, it's different. But like you said, there are different personalities. Late President Buhari has come and gone, and we have his legacy to define his presidency. Now, let's take a look at his 8 years as president. For you, what would be the highlight of his administration, be it infrastructure projects or policies that will stand the test of time, that you would look and say, look, it was President Muhammadu Buhari that did this, and everyone would always remember him for this? What were the highlights of his administration for you, Alhaji Sani?
Well, I think the highlight of his administration, if you look at the economic aspect, is the fact that under him, you were able to pass the PIA bill. I mentioned PIA because it's had to do with the most fundamental sector of our economy, which is the oil and gas sector. Anything that happens in that sector has ripple effects in other sectors because of the backward and forward linkages between other sectors and the petroleum industry. That's why I'm mentioning that bill in particular, even though it wasn't what should be, but at least you have a law. You have something that you can now use to operate that industry in accordance with the, if you like, the international best practices. But because it's being operated by Nigerians, the issue of corruption, again, is habilitating against the implementation of that bill itself. Number two, I think the passing also of the Electoral Act, Amendments Bill 2022, I think that also is a plus for him, because that also is very fundamental. If we couldn't get our election processes, right, then we cannot dream of having leaders that will represent us well. And I think he did his best. But again, here we are with the issue of corruption, which is also interfering. And I'm glad that National Assembly is taking a second look at most of the clauses, especially in that act, because after a test run, I call it a test run, of 2023 elections, it shows that there is a lot more that can be done, to make that law perfect and to address the challenges. So if you look at it, other things were there that he did. Infrastructure development, I think he constructed about how many roads, I understand, he also built these metro lines, the railways, the one between Kaduna and Abuja, the Takbi one, the one between Lagos and Ibadan, and things like that. I think those are major, because infrastructure development is very key to development of every economy. And so in that respect, you have to give it to him. And I like that. Why I mentioned the two laws is that those were, if properly handled, will define this country. Because if we can effectively manage the resources God has given to us, and like I said, you cannot but look at the oil and gas sector. What are we there? And look at also the agriculture sector. I think he did quite wonderfully well there by these anchor borrowers and things like that. But those beautiful initiatives, you can see how corruption ate into the fabrics of those those programs, and then almost made nonsense of the cost of corruption. So Muhammadu Buhari was on top of his game, really, when it comes to delivering as far as leadership the initiative is concerned, and when it comes to major programs that you can say that they are a kind of having a great leap forward, for this country in terms of social, economic, and political aspect of it. So these two bills, for me, they are historical, they are fundamental. What remains now is how we improve on them, because that is what the National Assembly is all about.
All right, thank you very much for highlighting this, progress and what you would highlight as key factors or key areas where we can celebrate the 8 years of President Buhari, ex-late President Buhari in office. But if we look at his time in office, there was a certain issue that is a major bit of conversation. I'm sure, Alhaji, that you've seen a number of the reactions on social media to the announcement of the president's passing, the late president's passing. And a number of those reactions are from young people who feel like their voices were stifled during his second term. Remember the NSAS protest of 2020 and how that was handled. It was a defining moment of former President Buhari's second term, and it was driven by youthful frustration and calls for reforms. So how would you say that this was handled? The actions by his administration, would you say that it further strengthened the democracy that our nation is pushing for? And what lessons do you think we can take from that?
Well, the lessons we can take, from that is to look at ourselves as a nation. Look at Nigeria. I always make reference to these primordial sentiments. When you talk about NSAS demonstration, and then, I don't know, put it side by side with also the hunger strike demonstration under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And look, where do you have the intensity, the fury of those demonstrations more highlighted or more endemic or more serious? NSAS was more serious in the southern part of the country. The hunger strike was more serious in the northern part of the country. It isn't that it didn't affect those two things we're talking about, it didn't affect us across the board, but because of the because of this primordial sentiments, that's what Buhari himself said. He said this is wanted to push him out, and it was the fury of that, demonstration was more in the southern part of the country, and the fury in the hunger strike was more in the northern part of the country under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So we have to be very, very cautious when you discuss some of these things that happen to us as a nation. And this is why we needed to take a look at our laws. How do we unify this country? How do we make us look at Nigeria as Nigeria? Not look at Nigeria from such a narrow prism of your tribe or your side or your region or your religion. That's what happened. That's what came out. So it wasn't, the narration was not on Buhari as a person. You could have anybody there. If he's from the north, the southern part will be so furious about anything you talk about. And if the man is from the south, the northern part, anything that went wrong will be so furious. That's what we are witnessing. So you must address that fundamental. Otherwise you lose the point.
Alhaji, I think that, Alhaji, I will need you to clarify so that I don't misunderstand you. Does it matter regardless of, what side of the nation is agitating about it? Because what I'm hearing, and I fear that what might be interpreted from what you say, might be some who would say that the effect of the NSAS protest in 2020 is being downplayed. Is that what is happening? Please correct me so that I don't misunderstand what exactly it is you're trying to say.
Tell me when young people were kept in prison from the north, most of them were from the north, and during the hunger strike. Why was underage people so maltreated in the manner they maltreated and killed some of them? The killings was more in the north. So I'm talking about Nigeria. We have to look at it from a very, very pragmatic point of view. Otherwise you lose the point. It's not the NSAS thing. Yes, nobody's saying that the police were not stepping beyond their bounds. Yes, we know that. Nobody supported what the police were doing to the young people, especially. But nobody also will support what you did to the young people from the north and under the hunger strike. So we must come together. We must look at Nigeria as Nigeria and then be able to solve these problems.
Yes.
Because what has eaten too deep into our fabric of society is these primordial sentiments. And that's why you find so many things, being looked, at problems that we are having. But we will get over them with time.
So, again, what I'm saying at the end of the day is that no young person in any part of the country deserves to have experienced the harshness that these strikes and protests have brought upon them. The NSAS protests gained notoriety. We do not believe that the NSAS protest was restricted to a certain part of the country, or it wasn't a protest for the southern youth of Nigeria. It was a protest by the young people of Nigeria who wanted a different way of life and garnered international recognition. So what I'm hearing now is, I get the sense that we're now making it about regions. No Nigerian is more important than another Nigerian. No Nigerian young person is more important than another, Nigerian young person in the south or in the north. And all of them, regardless, deserve to be heard and deserve to be prioritized, which is why I ask that, can we completely say that, we can gloss over what happened in 2020 and move on like it didn't happen?
Madam, the point I'm making is this. The destruction under the NSAS was more in the south, where buses were burnt, buildings were burnt and things like that. The destructions under hunger strike was more in the north, where a complete system that was built billions of dollars of things was burnt, people were killed. So you have to be factual. You have to be realistic, so that we don't miss, the essence of nationhood. That we must build this nation. We must bring people together.
Alhaji Sani, sorry to butt in. I think maybe you're not getting the question. We're not saying that there were no impacts. We agree. What my colleague is saying here is that the impact was felt in all over the nation, everywhere. Whether it's the north, that's what we're saying. We're not trying to marginalize or conscript to a certain jurisdiction. It was everywhere. What we're saying is, looking at the life and times of the former late president, do you think that he did enough, especially during the NSAS 2020? And what could have been done differently? We agree with that. The impact was felt everywhere. But we're saying, looking at the life and times, what do you think could have been done differently by the former president?
Because it was sectionalized. The fight. NSAS was sectionalized. Hunger strike was also sectionalized. I'm not making a holding forth for anybody or defending the North or defending the South. We have seen the two strikes that affected the young people, in terms of hunger, in terms of unemployment, in terms of the extrajudicial, killings that were taking place. But then look at what happened and how it happened. Look at the intensity. Look at the fury of those strikes. Where was it more? And then you can be traced to the fact that the president at that point in time was from the north. So you had the fury more from the south. Under hunger strike, you had the president from the south, and you had the fury of hunger strike more in the north. To the extent people are carrying flags of another country, So how much more divided could you be than that? So those strikes, those are the things they threw up. And if we miss them, we are just deceiving ourselves. We must take it and then do a deep study of who we are and see how do we further cement this country, bring ourselves together, unite ourselves together. So don't accuse any of the presidents, Bola Tinubu on what happened in the North hunger strike, or don't accuse the late Muhammadu Buhari, blessed memory, what happened during the NSAS, that because he didn't take actions. Both of them it's not individual affair. It's us as the people. That's the point I wanted to make. I'm trying to make.
Okay.
Right. Thank you so much for your time with us. Thanks for talking to us, and we truly appreciate the time you spent with us here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.